Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Common Council of the City of Huntington on January 28, 2025. Prior to the beginning of the business meeting, we'll have an invocation led by Reverend Chris Lance of Evangelical United Methodist, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Julie Shearer. All those who wish to participate may rise at this time.
Let us pray. Gracious God, you are the grantor of wisdom and the source of our courage and strength. We have gathered in this place to conduct the business of our city and all the work and effort that goes with it. Help us, O God, to work together for the common good. Give us courage to make decisions that will make life better for everyone in our community. Give us the grace to listen to one another and care for one another in these moments. Soften our tongues so that we may speak words of peace to each other, especially when we do not agree. Help all of us. Help this group of decision makers to live and lead with hearts for justice, mercy, and truth that is grounded in your grace and your call to love our neighbors, as we love ourselves. In times like these, we implore our leaders to be doubly committed to the common good and human decency as they keep in their hearts the words of John Wesley, "Do no harm, do good, stay in love with you, O God." And may we all take seriously and live into the challenging words from the prophet Micah, who tells us, "God has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God." Bless this group as they meet to do the work in front of them. Grant them your grace, humility, and wisdom. May kindness and love carry them through their business tonight. Amen.
Thank you. And with that then, we'll call the meeting to order, beginning with a roll call. Julie?
Brodigan,
Here.
Chapman,
Present.
Felton,
Here.
Funk, Johnson,
Here.
Pike,
Present.
Rensberger.
Present.
Thank you. And having established a quorum for the conducting of city business, move along on the agenda. Having no public hearings for this evening, we'll move along to minutes from the previous meeting. Is there a motion to bring the January 14th minutes to the floor for consideration and adoption?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Further discussion and consideration of the minutes this evening. Not hearing or seeing any further question or comment, we'll call the question in favor of adoption of the January 14th minutes as submitted. Julie?
Brodigan,
Yes.
Chapman,
Yes.
Felton,
Yes.
Funk, Johnson,
Yes.
Pike,
Yes.
Rensberger.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving along to reports from committees, boards, or commissions. Charlie, anything to update tonight?
I have nothing from dispatch, but I would just like to offer up this, that should be receiving the AIM legislative updates with the legislature in session right now. A lot of things are happening. I know some of those reports can be quite lengthy, but I think if you skim through them, you'll find little things in there that we ought to be paying attention to. And I would like to publicly thank Senator Zay for sponsoring Senate Bill 306. It's a film and media production tax credit. It would be beneficial for Huntington University. I know that Lance Clark and the mayor testified to committee on that. So Senator Zay is hopefully helping our community if we can get it out of committee and voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Paul? Dwight?
Nothing.
PJ?
Nothing here.
Todd?
Nothing here.
Andrew?
Nothing to report.
Dave?
Bryn's going to tell us all about
Okay. Okay. Emma, anything from that Viking thing?
Yeah, so we're currently in the research phase for our project at the parks, which if you don't know what that is the installation of a Gaga ball pit in 9 Square for our community, hopefully. And we're also in the beginning stages of our State of the Youth address that we'll hopefully be presenting to council on February 25th. So yeah, everything's going great.
Thank you, Emma. And for the benefit of those listening along, can you briefly describe to us 9 Square and Gaga Ball?
Sorry about that. Yeah, so 9 Square is kind of like 4 Square in the air, but you play with 9 people. You can also play with like 2 or 3 people. It's a really easy game. And then Gaga Ball is, you're in this arena and you all have one ball, usually like a kickball or like one of those big balls from Walmart, and you just hit it and try to hit the other person, and then you get out. And that game is also a game you could play with 4 people, 12 people, 20 people, as many people as you like. So yeah.
For those of us of a certain generation, Gaga Ball is like dodgeball without the welts. Thank you, Emma. Moving along to consideration of petitions or comments from citizens. Tonight we have the Humane Society presenting the 2024 annual report. We have their executive director as well as their board chair, and I'd invite both forward at this time to present to council.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for having us and allowing us some time on your agenda tonight. As much as what I love to talk about our shelter and all the work that we've accomplished, I am actually going to pass it over to Jenna Strick, who I know you all know very well, but you may not know that she has been involved with our shelter as the executive director for the last 6 months. It has been a whirlwind, to say the least, quite a few new things. So with that, I will pass it over to Jenna to give you an update on what
Thank you again for your time tonight. As Katie stated, I've been with the organization now officially as the director for 7 months, actually. So I know everything there is to know about the shelter. So ask questions. I have backup if I can't answer it. But I did want to take some time just to flip through the annual report with you. I won't read everything word for word, but do want to highlight some ways in which we are grateful for the way that the city does partner with the shelter and prioritizes animal welfare here in our community. So the first page just goes through a snapshot of the animals that we've had in our care throughout 2024. We had 1,715 animals come into our facility, which is pretty much on par with an organization like Humane Fort Wayne, which is a larger community, and a larger building too. And so we see many animals come into our care, and a majority of them do have positive outcomes, such as adoptions, reclaims or return to owners, and transfers to rescues. We also, in 2024, spayed and neutered 377 cats, specifically through the Huntington City Prevent a Litter program, and we'll get into more detail around that in a couple pages. Animal control, you know, we also do here for the entire county, which consisted of 2 full-time animal control officers who are on call 24/7 to answer those calls from dispatch, whether it be a stray animal, a sick animal, or a bite report, things like that. In 2024, we did have 530 of those calls come from city limits. And then also, we have given out to our community over 13,000 pounds of food, distributed case by case through the shelter, but also we partner with United with Love down on Byron Street, where they have the pet food pantry, and anytime we receive an overabundance of donations, we make sure that we send some down there too for families that are in need. So the second page gives you a little bit of a breakdown on what those animal control calls look like throughout the year. I do want to highlight the pie chart in the middle there where we talk about the call types from the city. A majority of them, of course, are animals at large or confined strays. And then the second highest areas would be the welfare checks and the sick injured categories. So when we talk about those welfare checks, what we're referring to those are citizen reported through dispatch, also through our Facebook page or the anonymous crime tip through the Huntington Police Department and the Sheriff's Office. And it is our job and our duty, and we take it very seriously, to make sure that all of those welfare checks are followed up on. Sometimes they're founded, sometimes they're not, but we want to make sure that our top priority is the animal welfare and well-being in those cases. As you can see from those 530 calls from the city limits, 280 animals were rescued through animal control in 2024. The next page here shows you just a breakdown of when we talk about 1,715 animals that have come into our facility. How many of those are dogs? How many of those are cats? And how many of those are other? You may be wondering what other is. It's other. It's birds, it's possums, it's raccoons, it's a fawn. Now, of course, we don't keep those animals in our care. We do transfer those animals to wildlife rehabbers who have the understanding and the resources to care for those animals. But we will respond to those calls for those animals and make sure that they are taken care of as well. One thing to highlight here, there's a little kitty cat that's like reaching up on this stat. It says 32% decrease in city animal control impounds. I think that has a lot to do with the next page that we're going to take a peek at here, which is our feline spay and neuter program. This is a huge thanks to the city for implementing this, for trusting us with moving this program forward and actually seeing some real results this year. So in 2024, a total of 529 cats were spayed and neutered in Huntington County. Of that 529, 377 were through the Huntington City Prevent or Litter program. So just a quick rundown of what that is. Any city resident can register on our website to go to one of 5 different public veterinarian clinics for a cost of $25 last year that's actually been bumped up to $30 this year, and have their cat spayed or neutered. And it has shown some real results. So since January of 2023, when the city invested in this program, we have had a total of 720 cats that have been spayed and neutered through our Prevent or Litter program. And then some of the statistics here that I think are pretty exciting: 31% less cats coming into the shelter through Huntington city limits. And then that has also resulted then in, of course, 51% less animal control calls, 17 less in strays brought by the public, and 20% less owner-surrendered cats. So we're talking about, looking at that community cat population, making sure that those unwanted litters aren't occurring, and taking care of these cats that are part of our community. So again, thank you for trusting us and investing in the community in this way. Other cities have actually asked for the blueprint of this project as well. So we've started something in the northern part of our state that other counties and other communities want to duplicate. I had the privilege of speaking with the Mayors and Commissioners Caucus a couple months ago, and we highlighted this in particular, the Prevent or Litter program. We had a mayor from, I believe it was Auburn, who reached out to learn a little bit more about what this means for our community and how they can start implementing it in their community. Shelters and animal control is different county by county throughout the state, so it's really neat that we get to be on the forefront of something that other communities are wanting to see happen as well. Also, our friends at the county have taken a lead in this too, where we have also seen some funding come from the county commissioners, county council, for us to start a spay-neuter program in the county. All last year, I don't know, we should have probably kept track over the 6 months that I was there in 2024 of how many times we said, no, sorry, we don't have funding for county cats. This is specifically for the city. We can offer you some recommendations for some low-cost vet clinics that you can go to, but we don't have any resources to do that at this point, and now we do. And so far, we have 79 of those 255 slots filled, and so we have no doubt that throughout the rest of the year, we will fill the rest of those slots for county cats in particular. And then the last page just shows you a little bit of a highlight of our public vaccine clinic that we did for the first time back in October. We saw 195 animals at the Isaac Walton League. And then when we talk about a vaccine clinic, there's a list of some of those vaccines, basic vaccines. We can't do rabies because we don't have a registered veterinarian on staff or on site, but we can provide some basic vaccines for dogs and cats. We can do microchips, which is very important when we talk about animals that are at large and returning those animals to their homes. We can also do other services such as dewormer, nail trims, things like that, that we also provide at the shelter for a low cost for any individual that would come to our facility. You don't have to have adopted from us. You can walk in during our open to the public hours and receive these services. So we like to see it as a way of giving, extending our services to the community, not just in the form of adoptions, but also in the form of how can we help you take care of your pet and keep your pet in your home instead of in the shelter. And this, which works toward our goal of 2025 pet retention. And then it also adds a small amount of revenue for us as the shelter as well. That pretty much wraps up the 2024 annual report. Any questions on the information that I covered? Go ahead, Todd.
On the chart that has the different calls, which call is, I mean, I'm sure you get calls that the dog's barking or something like that, or
Yeah.
for the noise ordinance stuff, and I didn't see neighbors calling in here. Is it under one of those?
Like as far as a neighbor calling in dispatch, or, yeah, that would be categorized in probably a welfare check, or maybe
Okay.
even a follow-up, or, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And those are visits to those homeowners and just having a conversation and educating them.
Yeah. And then the other one is, there's a rumor that we have roaming cats all over. And so is that included in the spay and neuter type? Or do you guys have somebody called and saying there's a loose cat, and then you try to catch that cat and then
Sure,
spay it and put it back in
sure.
that territory?
So, and I'll.
Because they're territorial, right, the cats?
Yeah.
You try to put them
Yep.
back where they were so another cat doesn't come in?
Correct. So there's a cat colony that we try to preserve in those areas of the community. It's really important for the ecosystem in that area. We have a community cat coordinator on staff, which she's contracted with us, that any city resident can contact her, and she will help trap these cats to bring them in for that spay-neuter purpose, and then release them back to where they came from.
And then those are included in the spay and neuter numbers?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Further questions? All right, thank you both for your work and for the report this evening.
Thank you.
Moving along the agenda under old business, we have two items. The first item is second reading of ordinance 1C25. Julie?
Ordinance 1C25. This ordinance, if adopted, would vacate an alley right-of-way located north of Gardendale Avenue, east of Ingle Street, south of Joe Street, plotted Everett Street, and west of Drover Street, plotted Calvert Street, all within the city of Huntington.
Thank you. Is there a motion to bring 1C25 to the floor for second and final reading?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Council be reminded this was presented at our previous meeting. We have Bryn Keplinger here if you have any follow-up questions, but any discussion or question regarding the ordinance in front of us? Not hearing any this time, we'll call the question in favor of approval of ordinance 1C25 on second and final reading. Julie?
Chapman?
Yes.
Felton?
Yes.
Funk? Johnson?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Rensberger?
Yes.
Brottigam.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item under old business is second and final reading of ordinance 2C25. Julie?
Ordinance 2C25. This ordinance, if adopted, would provide additional funding to Fire Pension Fund, Retired Fireman 8801-015-111.
Thank you. Is there a motion to bring ordinance 2C25 to the floor for consideration and adoption on second reading?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Further discussion and consideration of the ordinance. Hearing any at this time, we'll call the question in favor of approval of ordinance 2C25 on second and final reading. Julie?
Felton?
Yes.
Funk?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Rensberger?
Yes.
Brottigam?
Yes.
Chapman?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving along the agenda to consideration of new business. This evening, we have first reading of ordinance 3C25. Julie?
Ordinance 3C25. This ordinance, if adopted, would amend the official zoning map of the city of Huntington by changing the zoning of a specified parcel of real estate located north of East Market Street, east of Guilford Street, west of the north-south alley between Guilford and Byron Streets, and south of East Washington Street from R2 to MXD.
Thank you. Is there a motion to allow for first reading of ordinance 3C25?
Second.
Motion and second. Director Keplinger.
Yes, thank you. The petition before you tonight was heard at Planning Commission last Thursday. It received a unanimous vote. Dave, sorry you couldn't join us for that meeting. He's paid handsomely for missing that. In all seriousness, both the petitioner and their legal counsel are here tonight. If you have any questions for them, I promised them that I wouldn't force them into speaking, but if you want them to come up and talk, that's fine. The request before you is to rezone basically the entire half block west of that alley from R2 residential to MXD mixed use. As the applicant stated at the Planning Commission meeting, there's really a twofold reason for why they're seeking to do this. One, that residential zoning does not allow for the types of signage that they would like to utilize at the church for the various community outreach that they do. We're not talking about dynamic signs, we're talking about free meals, events, programs, those sort of things. They have a sign existing, it is on Market Street. They feel that it would be better visually to locate that all facing Guilford Street, where they feel they get more traffic. And so they would like to do that, and under that current R2 zoning, which is very restrictive in terms of signage for residential purposes, they would not be afforded to do that in a way that it makes sense. They would be restricted in the type of sign. It would utilize a parking spot. There's a whole bunch of other things. As part of this, and in advance of this rezoning, they've taken the pieces and parcels of real estate that there were, I think, 5 or 6 that they had that comprised that entire half block, and they've combined them all into a singular parcel, eliminating those internal parcel lines. The second reason for the rezoning is, if you're familiar of the facility there, the Gathering Place, it, for lack of a better term, functions as a meeting space for community groups, the church, its events, things like that. That building, originally constructed as a gas station, utilized for an HVAC business, and then most recently a pizza place, has always operated under variances of uses historically. And so the church doesn't really have a variance of use for that, but moving it into that MXD district, which is a little residential and a little commercial, allows for their continued use of that. So really, the two things that are driving this request for the rezoning are their options for signage and the ability to use that gathering place for what I would classify as non-residential purposes. In terms of the broader picture, council may recall that in 2015 or 16, the parsonage across the street was rezoned from B1 to MXD. That allowed for Place of Grace to start their transitional home there. And then just last year, you rezoned the former funeral home on the north side of Washington Street from R2 to MXD to allow them to utilize that for both office and their sort of thrift retail. So if you understand the area, starting at basically Guilford Street and going west, you have the church, then you go to the law offices and the pizza places, and you get into the heart of downtown, and you go to the east and you go half a block of kind of churches, parking lots, houses, a little bit of a mix, and then you go immediately into residential. And so that's what that MXD zoning district is really utilized for, is it's that transitional or transformational area, serves to buffer the full-fledged commercial and the full-fledged residential. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. We've done our notice, we've held our public hearing. Again, it's come to you from the Planning Commission with a unanimous favorable recommendation and in the form of an ordinance for you tonight. We had one neighbor show up, didn't have anything to say. I think he was mainly just interested in what was going on. And if you guys know Mike Perkins, and if he had something to say, he would have certainly said it at the meeting. So any questions that council may have, I'm happy to answer.
So other than Mike showing up at the meeting, did you guys go to the other neighbors and double check with them and everything?
So part of our notice requirements in the office is it's a threefold. One, we place a yellow sign at the property at least 10 days in advance. That was placed out on Guilford Street. 2, we send USPS mail to all the property owners within a certain distance, and so that distance varies upon the type of request, and the number of people that it reaches varies based on how dense those parcels are, and then obviously a legal notice in the newspaper. I believe Mr. Perkins reached out to the petitioners in advance of the meeting, but also elected to show up. We have received no other calls or questions.
I just want to know, because without a real paper, and people don't know what's going on unless they're friends in Facebook with somebody or something. Over to the mic, please.
I'm also on the governing board at Trinity.
Excellent.
And Mr. Perkins reached out to me. He was concerned about what we were planning, and I said, all we want to do is put a sign up that isn't in the middle of a parking space, and with 6 parcels, we had all of these interior setbacks that had to be observed.
Yeah.
And so that was the impetus for reconfiguring that as one lot, so we only had to look at perimeters rather than all of these internal lines. We don't intend to do anything different with that property than it is currently being used for. It's simply a matter of where we can place a sign and height and some of those things. But at this point, there's no electrification or anything like that that's not going to be flashing, and it'll be a very subtle, permanent sign.
Great, thank you.
Is there anything time-sensitive about the request, Director Kim?
I don't believe so.
Further questions regarding the matter, Council? Not hearing any further discussion, then we'll call the question in favor of approval of first reading of Ordinance 3C25. Julie?
Funk,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Pike,
Yes.
Rensberger,
Yes.
Brottigam,
Yes.
Chapman,
Yes.
Felton.
Yes.
Thank you, and then it'll be second and final reading at the next business meeting of the council. Any miscellaneous items for the good of the order from council members?
I do. I have a question that maybe somebody knows, maybe they don't. How often do we keep flags at half-staff for a president that passed away? Is it a certain amount of time, or, because they're still all at half-mast, I didn't know.
Yeah, federal flag code is clear that for a president, it's 30 days.
Oh, 30?
Former
Okay.
president, yep.
Great,
So,
thank you.
Yep. Okay, any other miscellaneous items? Few quick items for council members' benefit. So council may be aware, and I did share information, Charlie referenced it earlier, the AIM listserv updates. Some of the bills that are down at the State House are taking a very heavy look at reducing revenues at the local level. And to give you a sense of some of the things that they're talking about, Community Crossings Matching Grant has been a great funding program for road work across the state of Indiana. And one of the things they're looking at is that if a local municipality doesn't have a wheel tax, you might not be eligible for community crossings because they say you're not utilizing all the tools they've given you. Now, in a case like this, Huntington County has a wheel tax. Huntington City receives a proportionate amount of that wheel tax based on our population. The State House would not count that under the current terms of what they're looking at. They would expect us to create our own wheel tax on top of the county wheel tax so that city residents would be paying a double wheel tax. I'll leave council to seek out to your constituents how they would feel about something like that. But generally, we understand that it's not appreciated. And so would ask that you would reach out to members of the State House to help them understand how we actually manage funds at a local level, the work that gets done through those revenues, and ask that they would consider not severely damaging our ability to serve our public. Another item, recently following executive orders from President Trump, the Office of Management and Budget from the federal government sent out a notice nationwide effectively that there is a pause on federal grants while they're under review for alignment with the incoming administration's priorities. What that means for the city of Huntington is that our EPA Brownfield grant, which is used for demolition of HK Porter, and the USDA Forestry grant that we're in the process of hiring the forester for, both of those are on pause. What pause means is until February 10th, it is under review for that alignment, and then we will be given further instruction and guidance. We've reached out to our grant advocates in DC. They've done some legwork on this. They are optimistic that our grants will not be impacted by this in the end, but ultimately, we'll know better on February 11th. But just so council and the public are aware, those are things that we're watching right now and working through. So with that then, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Is there a second? Those in favor indicate by saying aye.